Do you ever feel weird, awkward, uncomfortable, anxious, worried, self-conscious when going into a social situation? Or maybe even just when you think about going into some kind of new social situation, whether it's a big group event, whether it's a small group gathering, whether it's some kind of meeting at work or anything like that. Do these things ever come up for you? And if so, that is social anxiety. It's getting anxious about any kind of social situation, either when we're in it or just even thinking about going into it. Today we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how to deal with it, how to get through it, and how to not let these feelings of anxiety really stop us and prevent us from showing up and doing things that we might otherwise really want to do and get something really great out of. If you're new to me and this is the first time we're connecting, my name is Kristina, and I'm a registered clinical therapist, a coach, a researcher, and an online course creator. I have a master's degree in counseling psychology, and I work to help men and women get through the crap that is holding them back so they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And I'm going to be teaching you and talking about 5 different ways that you can start to feel more comfortable and confident in any kind of social situation that typically makes you feel anxious or nervous or self-conscious or uncomfortable. But first, I want to tell you a story about something that happened to me a little while ago that really shifted my whole perspective on this one. So it wasn't that long ago that I was going to this women's networking event, and it was an event for women in Vancouver who were small business owners. And there was only going to be about 50 or so people there. And I remember that night I was running a few minutes late, and I was walking down the street because it was at kind of this posh little boutique in this posh little area of town. And I remember walking down the street and feeling a little bit nervous and like not really knowing what to expect. And I didn't really know anyone that was going to be there. So I was feeling a little bit self-conscious and a little bit uncomfortable, but I was like, it's okay. I can do this. It's not a big deal. And I was running late. So I thought, I'll just slip in and then I will, figure it out from there. Little did I know that at the time that I was going to be walking into this room, into this boutique, that every single person in the room would be standing in a circle around the room, and people would be going around and introducing themselves and talking about what they did. And it just so happens that at the moment that I walked in, the person who was introducing themselves was standing right beside the entrance door. So here's Julia walking in, and all of a sudden, 100 eyes on her. And there was nothing that I could do. My whole attempt to just slip in and kind of go unnoticed was completely blown out of the water, and everyone was looking at me. I immediately felt my face flush and my heart start beating faster, and I was feeling so uncomfortable. So I just sort of as quickly as possible kind of slipped in behind some people and kind of tried to get myself together and took a few deep breaths. And I remember thinking to myself, what are people thinking about me? Are people thinking negative things? Are people judging me? And I felt so uncomfortable because I didn't know what people are thinking. And I assumed that people weren't thinking good things. Fast forward to 2 minutes later, another woman who was obviously running late as well walked in, same situation, 100 eyes on her, and she kind of just, same thing, looked a little stunned and slipped in, and things just sort of continued on. And then I started to pay attention to myself and started to think, well, what did I think when she walked into the room late, when she came in kind of unexpectedly and seeing everything that was happening and not really knowing what to do? What was I thinking? And do you know what I was thinking? Nothing. Wasn't standing there judging her, criticizing her. The only thing I thought in that moment was like, oh, there's somebody else who is running late as well. And that's it. And interestingly enough, research actually shows that 80% of people who walk into a new and unfamiliar situation, usually some kind of social situation, 80% of people feel uncomfortable or self-conscious or anxious in those at least first few moments. That this is a normal thing. This is a human thing. That we all kind of feel uncomfortable going into these new and unfamiliar situations, or at least 80% of us do. And so here's the other side of that. If 80% of the people in the room are spending their time and their mental energy and their thoughts are all around worrying about what other people might be thinking about them, then who is actually spending all of this time standing around and judging and criticizing us? We think and we're scared that people are standing around criticizing and judging us, but no one actually really is doing that because everyone is standing around worrying about whether or not other people are judging or criticizing them. So a little bit of a reality check for this one as we get into these 5 different things that we can do to help ourselves feel more confident. But I hope that even that in and of itself helps to start to shift things around in your mind. That this idea that people are all people have to do, people have nothing better to do than to be judging and criticizing you for every move you make. It's just not true. First of all, because people usually have better things to do. And second of all, because they're spending the same amount of mental space worrying about the same things. So don't actually have the time to do it. But how do we make it all easier? For those of us who do struggle going into social situations, for those among us who maybe struggle quite a bit with this and get really anxious, even thinking about going into a social situation, what can we do? And I have 5 things that's going to make it a whole lot easier for you. Number 1, don't go alone. If you really struggle with feeling uncomfortable and anxious in social situations, bring a wingman or a wingwoman, bring a buddy with you, someone that you can walk in with. And there is just this feeling, a little bit more feeling of comfort and security when you have that person there, when you're like, okay, I'm not going to be alone. I'm going to have this person by my side, and even let them know, hey, can you just stick by my side until I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable? Because I sometimes just really don't feel comfortable in new social situations. So letting them know too, so that as soon as you don't walk into the room, if they're like someone who doesn't ever get anxious, or if they know a lot of people in the room, or it's a situation where they're comfortable, they don't just blow off and kind of leave you standing there. So let them know that, you might need them for at least the first little while. The next one is to get yourself there. A lot of times we get so stuck in our head and we get so freaked out and we create all these situations and all these scenarios and we think it's going to be awful, or we think things are going to get really uncomfortable and we want to avoid the whole thing. But allowing ourselves to just get there and get there by letting yourself off the hook. Now, I don't mean letting yourself off the hook by not going at all, but reducing the expectation or lowering your expectation and saying, okay, so I'm going to go to this event and I'm going to show up and I'm going to show my face and I'm going to stay for 20 minutes and I only have to stay for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is. And then if I'm still feeling uncomfortable, if I still don't want to be there, I'm allowed to leave. Because sometimes if we say to ourselves, oh, I just can't fathom going and spending the whole night in this situation with these people that I don't know and with all of this stuff going on that's unfamiliar to me or whatever it is, then yeah, we can freak ourselves out because it feels so big. It feels so intense. But if I tell myself I'm going to go, I'm going to take one turn about the room, I'm going to have like one drink or like one bit of snack or whatever it is, a little bit of hors d'oeuvre or whatever it is, but I'm going to stay for 20 minutes. And then if I'm still feeling uncomfortable, I am allowed to leave. So getting yourself there by letting yourself off the hook and making it feel a lot more doable by not forcing yourself to go for the whole night and be fully involved and invested in everything for that whole amount of time. The next one is, this is a big one for those among us who might struggle with having conversations and worrying about having awkward conversations with people that we don't know very well. And here's a little bit of a perspective shift on this one. If you're having an awkward conversation, if you're chatting with someone and it kind of just feels uncomfortable, it feels a little bit awkward, and you tell yourself, oh, it's because I'm awkward, it's because I'm lame, it's because, I'm not good in social situations. Here's a little bit of a reality check for that one. It takes 2 to tango. So if you're having a bit of an awkward, uncomfortable conversation with someone, then they are also contributing to that awkward uncomfortableness as well. And so we blame ourselves and think, oh, it's all my fault, but they're in the conversation as well. And they might not be really helping with making things feel more at ease and more just sort of comfortable and the conversation going and flowing. So why is it all your fault? That we don't need to be so hard on ourselves for this one. That if it's uncomfortable for me, then they're probably maybe even thinking the same thing, like, oh, like I kind of made that conversation a bit uncomfortable. So knowing that it takes two to tango and it's not all your fault if a conversation is uncomfortable or awkward, and to know that all of us have moments of feeling awkward or uncomfortable and have uncomfortable conversations or awkward conversations. It's just part of it. It just happens. So to not be so hard on yourself for that one. The next one is to remember that you're not alone. So remember that 80% of the people in the room were or are feeling uncomfortable. So 80% of the people in the room were feeling self-conscious or worried at some point during that event, at some point of that social situation, whether it's when they came in or whether they're still feeling that way, but knowing that you're not alone. And sometimes that's a huge thing to remind ourselves of. I'm not the only person in this room who is feeling uncomfortable right now. There's not something wrong with me for feeling uncomfortable. It's a pretty normal thing. 80% of the people in this room were feeling that at some point during this social gathering. Which leads us nicely into number 5, and stick around because I might have a bonus one for you. But number 5 is the simplest and one of the most effective ways to get out of your own head is to get into somebody else's and help them out. So as you're standing there feeling uncomfortable or awkward or not sure what to do with yourself, look around the room and look for somebody else who is also standing there alone, maybe waiting and wondering what they should do with themselves, and walk up to them and start a conversation. And chances are they will be so relieved to have someone to talk to that the conversation will be really easy to have. So now our bonus one, and this is a really important one. This is one that we oftentimes overlook. And this is one where I just want you to check in with yourself. As simple as that. Because chances are you've been in a social situation before, you've been in a group gathering, that you've been in a meeting or whatever it is where you felt anxious or uncomfortable, but you got through it. How did you do it? Take a second and check in with yourself. What resources, what tools, what strategies and tips do I already have that work for me? We oftentimes forget this. We oftentimes forget that we already have a lot of resources at our fingertips that we've used before. So take a bit of an inventory, take a bit of a history. What do I already know how to do to help me feel maybe more comfortable and confident in some of these situations? And I want to tell you about someone that I was talking to recently about exactly this and the breakthrough that he had as we were having this conversation and trying to help him, because he was really struggling with feeling really anxious before and during meetings. So whenever he would find out they had a meeting, some kind of group meeting at his work that he had to go to, he would start to feel really anxious right away. And then when the meeting would start, he would continue to feel anxious and almost even get really panicky. And what he realized is that the one thing, the surefire thing that helps him to feel almost immediately more comfortable is when he doesn't wait to get called on or questioned before he speaks for the first time in the meeting. So from the point that he sits down until somebody calls on him or questions him, if he can take the initiative to contribute something, to say something in the meeting first before that happens, if he does it before someone puts him on the spot, then as soon as he says something in the group, he immediately feels more comfortable. And so that was as simple as that. So then after that, if somebody does question him or call on him, he's already feeling comfortable, so he's fine. He's fine if that happens then. But first, he needs to take the initiative himself to say something. And so just discovering that, just learning that, just figuring that out and reminding himself of that made his anxiety go right down. So check in with yourself. Ask yourself, what helps me? I've been in these situations before. How did I get through it? I also want to make sure that before you go, you grab my 7 simple ways to immediately reduce anxiety. It's a handout. It's in the description. There's a link there, so make sure you grab it before you go. It's 7 simple, straightforward, easy, and a few of them are really fun ways to immediately reduce your anxiety. You can even use some of these when you're struggling or feeling anxious or awkward or nervous or anxious about going into a social situation. So make sure you grab that before you go. And come and join my Facebook group, goodformegroup.com. It is a group full of some of the most encouraging, supportive, caring, and fun men and women. So join us there for more connection and community. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so we can stay connected, and like the video. Leave your comments in the comment section below. What actually helps you? Share your knowledge, share your expertise. You are going to help someone if you share what works for you. It's going to help somebody else. So make sure you don't go before leaving your tool or trick or strategy for feeling more comfortable and confident in any kind of social situation. And share the video out so that more people can have this information. Because again, remember, 80% of people struggle with feeling uncomfortable in social situations. Thanks for being here. And until next time, take good care.